Good evening. Welcome to the City of Arts Virtual Music Symposium. This symposium is brought to you by LEAP, Linking Everyday Extraordinary People, The Key of G, Everett's Natural Beauty School and Salon, Hug Detroit Day, and in Bayou, it's not business as usual. Our moderator is Kerry, Lacy. Our panelists are Jaribu Shahid, Marion Hayden, Ralphe Armstrong, Chuck Bartels, Ibrahim Jones. Our panel discussion is bass players. So, sit back, relax, learn, and enjoy. Kerry, it's all yours.
All righty. Well, thank you for joining us. And I can tell you that I am really, really excited to be a part of this program and a part of this panel. As a bassist myself, I was just saying to the panel before we went live that when I started playing bass, a lot of the folks that you're going to see and chat with tonight, they were already out there doing the things that I'd only dreamed about. So it's really an honor to share this space. And all you bass players, can you turn your cameras on? I see Jaribu. Hey, Jaribu.
What's up, man? You hear me good?
I can hear you perfect, man.
Right
you
on.
Cool. There's Marion, looking lovely as ever. Chuck Bartels, Ibrahim Jones. We're just missing a few folks, but I'm sure they'll chime in. So I kept thinking about this night, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Hakeem Witherspoon. He's the people's poet, and he was here, and I said, you can't miss the event because he's an artist as well. But I want to ask this question. What drew you to the bass? And I'm going to go ladies first, so I'm going to go with Marion. Marion, what drew you to the bass, and what has it done with you, for you, and to you?
Those are all very good questions. Well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for having me on the panel. Thank you so much to Sheila and Phil for doing this fabulous music symposium this week. And we all need this very, very much. It's so great to be in some sort of community with all of my great brothers and sisters in the music. For me, the bass spoke to me. The bass was the instrument that spoke to me. I always like to say the main deal for me was that my parents didn't say, this instrument is not for you. They never said that this big bass is not for a girl. They just said, oh, you want to play the bass? Well, we'll just get you a bass then. But first it was a cello. And then as soon as I got big enough to handle a bass, I started handling the bass. And so that was the instrument that was kind of spoke to me, was the thing that got to me the most. I always thought it was a beautiful thing. It was especially the acoustic bass, which is what I play the most of. It's a thing of beauty. There's a lot of artistry involved in just the making of the instrument, which really appealed to me. I really love the low notes. And then when I began to see how the bass functioned in the band, which I played cello and orchestras before then, I knew that one of the things that was really important about the bass is that the entire the harmonic movement of the orchestras all pivoted on the bass. And so after I found that out, then I just became really loving the instrument, and especially in big band, small group, whatever it is that I could play in. And so I was just also really lucky, I'll say, without getting too lengthy so that everyone else can share, is that the Detroit Public Schools at the time when I was coming up, was really a fabulous place to learn the instrument. Just some really great educators, people
Wow.
that teachers that were deeply, deeply committed to music education, and a school system that was also committed to music education too. So, we had small orchestras. Many of the schools had jazz bands. A man named Ernie Rogers was my music teacher in middle school. Ernie
Yes,
Rogers, who was
Ernie.
so fantastic. Who was responsible for the jazz program at Northwestern High School. Ben Pruitt was also one of my musical teachers. So I just had some. Then I had just some fabulous orchestral teachers. A man named Cortez, Mr. Cortez, who was the orchestral teacher at Cass. His wife Helen Cortez, who was at Henry Ford, as I went to have Cass and Henry Ford. So just some great educators, and plus, of course, our community education here in terms of jazz and improvised music is second to none. We have our community scholars, that we learned from. Were just really, really important.
Amazing, amazing. So next I'm gonna go, that's a great story, Marion. I've never heard it, so it's new to me after all these years that I've been knowing you. So Jaribu was one of the first guys that I saw playing the bass. So Jaribu, what's your story? How did you come to the bass?
Well, I went to Cass, but I wasn't in the music department. I was in the Seize the Time, Kill the Swine, Death to the Fascist Pig curriculum. And so they put me out of Cass. I was actually lab partners with Ralphe, and I wasn't thinking about music at the time. And a day where we were both there at the same time was a strange day. He was already playing like crazy at that age, and Marion was already out there playing. I wasn't even thinking about the bass. I went to Mumford, and a good friend of mine, Malikia Kinney, was playing guitar, and so I started playing bass guitar. And we were playing rock, in idioms where black folks started the music, but we don't get to do it anymore. I don't know. But I started out playing rock, and then it was Funkadelic, Hendrix, and Sun Ra. And then my first jazz record was Ascension, and my second jazz record was Atlantis by Sun Ra. So when I heard the music that sounded like I needed a different sound, that's what drew me to the upright, because I knew I wasn't getting that sound out of the electric and wasn't even trying.
Yeah, because I think the first time I saw you, Jaribu, you might have been playing at Alvin's on a Tuesday night, and I'd never really been in the room with an acoustic bass, and it might have been you and Alex Brooks on drums and whoever else was playing, but it struck me. Chuck Bartels. Chuck came on screen with the jazz bass. So Chuck, what's your story? What's going on?
I was young, and my cousin got a bass for Christmas, and he was playing, the classic Smoke on the Water type thing on it, and that was pretty much what alerted me to it. It put it in my radar, and then I proceeded to beg my folks for the next 3 years until I finally wore them down, and they bought me a bass. And I was really into a lot of rock stuff back then, a lot of like the Zeppelin type stuff. And then I got turned on to Jocko, and that was when I decided to do it for a living. It pretty much changed my life. And I'm with you. I've seen everybody here play, and I've been just blown away. I used to see Jaribu play at Alvin's when I first came to town in the early 90s, and my jaw would hit the floor, and I would just go home with my head down like, oh, I got some work to do. Holy cow, But yeah, I'd say that was pretty much it. I got into Jocko, and then I met Matt Michaels, and Matt Michaels gave me a scholarship at Wayne. So I started studying jazz at Wayne State, and here we are today. Of course, I'm not playing a ton of jazz, but yeah, I do it, I do it for a living, and I love it, and I still love it. I'm 52, and I love it as much as I did when I was 14.
Sweet, sweet. And the youngster in the group, Ibrahim Jones.
Well, I come from, my dad was, a lot of people knew my dad right before, he passed last year, but this is him back here. But my dad was a music teacher for over 30 years, and he went to school, got his master's degree in music education. So I was kind of born into it because of my father. I wasn't a bassist at the beginning. I went to Go Lightly Educational Center, middle school, and I was a clarinet player.
Wow.
At the beginning, yeah. And what happened was I got really good. Actually, I was on first chair on clarinet in middle school. I didn't start playing bass until I got into the 7th grade. But it's kind of a funny story. I was playing Giant Steps, and my music teacher was Jose Taylor at Golightly. He taught Rodney Whitaker. You know, Rodney Whitaker went to Golightly. Golightly was pretty, he had a very good program going on at Golightly. But I was playing, and the bass player in the band kept messing up my solo. And I noticed that he was dragging a little bit. And every time I was trying to solo on stuff, the tempo was kind of dragging a little bit. And I kept turning around, kind of looking at it, but I was a nice guy. I didn't say anything, but I kind of got fed up with it. The rhythm section. I forget who was in the rhythm section, but I noticed the bass player just kept dragging and getting lost in the changes. So after the concert, I went over to Mr. Taylor and asked, could I play bass? Because I was kind of, a little ticked off what was going on. My solo was getting messed up. And every time I solo, he would mess up my solo. And I went and asked him, could I play, I wanted to learn the bass. And actually that's actually what kind of motivated me to play. I actually enjoyed clarinet. My dad didn't want me to get off clarinet. He was kind of mad that I switched over to bass because I had been playing clarinet so long. And then he put me on bass and I started learning it. And I fell in love with it ever since.
Wow.
I started in 7th grade, 8th grade. He was my bass teacher. And then after that, I went to Cass Tech High School, and Mark Haas was my bass teacher all 4 years there. Marion was there too, doing private lessons with me. And I just really enjoyed it after that. But yeah, that's kind of like how I ended up playing. It was more so I wanted to drive things a little bit more in the rhythm section.
Wow.
And it turned out to be a good decision. And I'm just happy with it. Yeah.
I'll take a pause. So Sheila, do we have anybody in the chat with questions from the audience? Is there anybody in the chat? I can't really see the chat.
Well, what's your story?
My story?
Yes.
Well, I came to Detroit in 1975 to study engineering, and Jaribu, I was living in the Cass Corridor, and that's when I saw you. And I was going to church, and Fred Hammond was playing the bass. And after church service, I walked up and I said, "Man, you're really good at that." He said, "Go get you one." And I went and bought a Fender Precision, and I started playing in apostolic churches. But when I started hearing folks, and somebody said it, Jaribu said it, he was playing electric, but when he heard this acoustic, he couldn't get the same sound. And for me, as an engineering type, I was trying to understand music. So I was reading Bass Player magazine, but when I started hearing jazz, hearing Marion and hearing Jaribu, I'm like, I can't get this on the electric. And I kind of got sucked into the upright bass. Look who showed up, Ralphe Armstrong. Ralph, you're on mute.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Jaribu. So Ralph, your microphone is muted. You're gonna have to unmute that, or can't hear you. Let's see if we can unmute Ralph. Can somebody unmute him? There you go. Hey, Ralph.
He would have to unmute himself.
No, he's unmuted.
Is he?
So we can't hear you, Ralph.
We can't hear you, man.
Vozinci.
So until Ralph interrupts us with his lovely voice, because we can't hear you, Ralph. So I don't know what's going on. I want to. Here's one of the things that I've noticed about all of your careers. You've done a lot of recording, a lot of traveling, and you played on different genres of music. So I'm gonna leave it open. And could you share with some of the folks out here some of the places that you've traveled, not only geographically, but where you've traveled musically? I'll start with Jaribu.
Oh man, before Ralph, that don't make sense, but I'll do it anyway.
Okay, I would do Ralph, but Ralph is still muted. Ralph, we can't hear you.
Can you hear us, Ralph? I'll call him.
Okay.
So
his mute just went off. I think I just saw his mute thing go off. You should be good now.
Say something, Ralph.
Okay, let me. I'll go ahead while he's working that out. I was very lucky to meet some people early in my career that took me under their wings and took me a lot of places. Um, there was a series at the DIA sponsored by the Creative Arts Collective, and that's where I met Roscoe Mitchell, Henry Threadgill, Hamid Blewett, cats like that. And so, because I had a different thing I was trying to do, they, these were people that helped me. And I think the first person I went to Europe with was Roscoe, and that was very early on. And fortunately, I've been able to see a lot of the world. Highlights was I spent a month in Cuba. I'll never be the same.
Wow. Wow.
I'll never be the same after that. So
And why do you say that, Jaribu? Why do you say you never be the same?
Well, first of all, the standard of musicianship was higher than anything I've ever seen, to the point where there was no attitude because it was just expected. It's not like New York where everybody's got their chest out. Everybody was just playing like crazy and on time, everything that you would expect without any kind of ego because, like I said, it was just expected and it was hooked up with the religion. And it was just an incredible experience to be in that kind of environment. And I enjoyed seeing the New York cats put in their place.
Well, and where did that take? I see you got a bass in your hand, so show some of us where it took you musically, Jaribu.
Well, we were down there recording at the same studio that Nat King Cole did that record in Espanol, and with that same engineer. And it was just, so we were there long enough to really work on it. We had string players, we had all kinds of stuff. So, I listened to a lot of music there, but it was more indirect.
Mm.
I got more from Jerry Gonzalez when it came to the Afro-Cuban thing than when, any direct lessons about that kind of music. But they did everything. They did classical, they did jazz like crazy, everything. Now they had their accent on it. Ain't nothing like black Americans to play real jazz with the right feeling. I'm sorry, European jazz musicians. Sorry to say this, but it's true. We got the thing.
So let me ask you, you got a bass in your hand. For those that don't really know what an Afro-Cuban bass line sounds like, can you play something, Jaribu?
Just anticipate it against the clave. I saw a system a guy wrote where they counted that way: 4 1 2 3, 4 1 2 3.
4 1 2 3.
Yeah, going with the accents that went along with the clave.
Got it. So Chuck, so some of the places you've been that you'll never erase from your memories and the musical journeys you want to share with the audience.
Well, I ended up playing with Betty Levette, and she took me all over the world. So I got to see the world in only that insane way that musicians see it, where you're too busy to really go as a tourist. But I went to so many places, like country after country, night after night. And then after I was done with her, I ended up joining Sturgill Simpson's band, who I still play with. And it was kind of the same thing, just kind of all over the world, a lot of really cool venues, places like Red Rocks. Probably the bucket list moment for me is playing Saturday Night Live.
Wow. So when did you play Saturday Night Live?
2017.
What?
Yeah, it was that's one of my favorite shows. I've been watching it since I was a kid, and it was everything that I hoped it would be and more. It didn't disappoint in any way. So as far as I was concerned, after I did that, I'm happy just to do whatever at this point. I'm still like a kid in a candy store from that. But with Sturgill, yeah, we've done a lot of cool things. We've shared the stage. We've played shows with Guns N' Roses. We played with a lot of bigger bands. We've done our own big shows. So I've got to see kind of all sides of it, especially the road aspect of it. Spent a little bit of time in Japan and Australia.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful ride. I got no complaints at this point.
Beautiful. Ibrahim.
I think for me, everybody else on the panel's been everywhere. I'm probably the one that hasn't traveled as much as they have. But the places that I have been to that I really like was the Caribbean islands. I've been fortunate enough to go to Japan. I would like to go to Australia. That sounds nice. But for me, the Caribbean islands were really nice. And the person that I've been traveling with is David Murray. He's with Blue Note. And so we've been getting a lot of things out there recently. And some of the people that I've had the pleasure of really playing with was an icon of Benny Golson. And I had the pleasure of working with him along with Galen when I did some things back, before the pandemic. Actually, I was getting ready to do a show in Toronto with Benny right before the pandemic hit. And, everything got canceled. But yeah, that's, the islands is some of the places that I really like.
And musically, what if you talk about your journey musically, what are some of the things that you really said, here's a place that I played that I'd love to go back to this place musically, where a space that you played and that you just loved?
New Orleans. Yeah, and that's new. I like New Orleans. New York is a lot of fun. I guess those places go without saying.
So why New Orleans, Eve? Why New Orleans?
New Orleans has a vibe that New Orleans, they do everything. I really like their second line thing that they have down there. That's a lot of fun. I used to be in marching band in Castech, and I kind of idolize how they do a lot of the second line things down there. And of course, the jazz music is great down there too. But they're pretty. It's no place like it. Detroit, it reminds me a lot of how we get down here a little bit. A lot of it, not a little bit, but a lot.
Got it.
But yeah, I really like New Orleans.
Beautiful. Ralph, say something, see if we can hear you.
I have never had this much problem getting on Zoom in my entire life.
Well,
I did this on my own with my own technical savvy. I did it.
Well, Ralph, we'll go to you. So we had a question right before this, but I'll give you the question. What really drew you to the bass? How did you come to the bass, Mr. Ralphe Armstrong?
How did I ever, what made me want to play the bass?
Yeah, how did you connect with the bass and start playing the bass?
Well, this is a long, old story. I had an uncle who played the bass. His name was Lee Crockett. And my father was a violinist. Okay, Louis Bluey, Howard Armstrong.
Yes, sir.
And my thing, now let me tell you, this is true. Hey, Jaribu, good to see you. That's Cass Tech, my old schoolmate. So what it was, I could never get a sound out of the violin. I hated the violin. I have a picture my father painted of me at the age of 5 holding a violin, and I cried all during the painting because I hated the violin, because every time I picked it up, it would go squeak, squeak, squeak. I'm animated as hell today. But anyway, I heard my uncle play this golden K bass, and he was a sharp dresser, drove a Cadillac, and I almost pulled my dad's pants off. I said, I want to play the big bass like Uncle Elsie. I want to play the big bass. And finally, he said, God dang it, dang nabbit. I almost pulled his pants off of him. And my father built me a bass.
Wow.
Never forget it. And it was a little bass. It was square and it had a round hole like a guitar. And that's how I got started. And the only thing I would learn on the bass was G and D, and he would start me out with those 2 notes because most of the songs were like country and western, hillbilly blues. And then I would put the 5th in, the C. And that's how I got started.
Wow. Wow. Now you're going to answer this next question after Marion. So the next question up was share some of your favorite musical journeys and even geographical journeys that the bass has allowed you to take advantage of. So go ahead, Marion. You're on mute, Marion.
In terms of travel, that's what you're asking now, right?
travels physically and musically?
Well, actually, I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna have to give a ditto to Ibrahim on that New Orleans thing. That I think that's a really impactful city. I've had a
Yeah.
chance to go down there several times, and I've actually played at the Preservation Hall 3 times, which is
Wow.
which is the seat of traditional New Orleans traditional music, with one of our great New Orleans traditional musicians who was actually originally from Detroit, from New Orleans, but spent like decades here in Detroit, the great Charlie Gabriel.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
so I've been
Yes.
down there to play with Charles at Preservation Hall. Charles is like the leader of their bands, and so I love that place. But other than that, I like small towns and large towns. I've been touring with the Detroit All Star Ambassador Band. That's part of the Jazz Festival, and so we've been to Japan. We've been done 4 tours to Japan in the last several years, and different areas, and that's an audience that really loves the music. And I just say that some of my best sound experiences have definitely been in Japan. They really know what they really take quite about a lot of pride in detailing and making sure that your experience as an artist is really great. I've been to Panama. Went to the Panama Jazz Festival. That was last year. It's super nice. I performed in South Africa. I have to say that was
Oh,
also a really impactful experience. You know, especially there are some one of the places we went to in South Africa. This is part of a faculty exchange with my faculty with Ellen Rowe, who was our chair of the jazz faculty at U of M. And there's a town called Port Elizabeth, which is where Nelson Mandela is from. And they have a whole cadre of community musicians, just that reminds me so much of our Detroit musicians, people that really embrace are scholarly in their understanding of the music, really embrace the traditions, and they've continued to bring up other generations the way we do here in Detroit. And it was just really great working with those cats. That was something I'll never forget. We got some good documentation, some video, and some pics. And then I'll say also with Straight Ahead, we had a run of about 6 years that we toured to Jamaica. That was really great. That's another community. They're not necessarily jazz folks, but they do love their music traditions, and I really appreciate that about them. And so, it's really a privilege to be able to tour and play this music. I'll just say that it's a privilege to do it.
so when you think about musical, what was one of your most favorite musical journeys that you played? A style of music, or a concert, or a venue?
You know what? I'm gonna have to go back. I'm gonna tell you, I have to go back to and I played with a pretty healthy list of people, especially when they've come here to Detroit. But I'd have to say that probably my most impactful musical experience was playing at a club that's no longer open anymore. It's a place called Dummy George's, and I know that Jaribu and Ralph probably know this club very well. And that was my first experience being able to have a regular gig on a club that was in the jazz circuit. And so, in
Wow.
other words, this was a club. It was on McNichols, between Wyoming and Myers, and this was a club that was on what they call the Chitlin circuit at that time. It was probably one of the last of the clubs on the Chitlin circuit. And it was a place where you had a regular cadre of just fabulous musicians that used to tour through there. I'm talking about Art Farmer. I think Ralph used to do that Art Farmer gig. I worked with Red Prysock there. I worked with Spanky Wilson there. Um, Teddy Harris was the MD. He was the head of the house band. We used to have to get there. I worked with Terry Collier there. Used to have to actually read people's arrangements, right? So this was a gig for someone that you had to have skills to be able to be in that gig. And I was a young bass player, but it was a really great opportunity to really take care of business on that level. People like O.C. Smith used to run through there, Johnny Hartman. This club was functioning, you know, 7 nights a week, but they would have entertainment. We used to do a jam session there, which Racy Biggs was the jam session leader. Before that, it was Kamau Kenyatta, and so that was really where I learned a lot about music and how to how to really function as a pro. That was really impactful for me. I talk about it a lot, and like I said, I know Jaribu and Ralph know about that place.
Well, that's amazing.
They're young enough to know.
When's the last time you've seen any musical venue that had music 7 nights a week? Man, I wish they'd bring that back.
Me too.
Wow. Yeah.
Me too. That's, and on top of that, I'm going to say this too, is that there was a seriousness about the music, and they did expect you to come up to a certain level to do it. It was not equitable. It probably could have been more equitable, but there was a sense that you had to come up to a certain standard of the music, which was tough at the time, but I really appreciate that now. I do appreciate that.
Wow. Well, thank you, Marion. So Ralph, share with everyone some of your favorite places that you've been, and both geographically in your travels and musically.
Excuse me, Ralph.
Yeah.
Before you start, Giselle put something in the chat. Is it your birthday?
My birthday was yesterday, but I'm celebrating the whole rest of the damn month because I'm a senior citizen.
Okay, Ralph.
Well, happy birthday.
I got Medicare, and I get my pension in 2 months from the American Federation of Musicians. Thanks to President Biden, it's good for 30 years. Thanks to the new president. He passed.
Birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ralph. Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you so much.
Ralph.
God bless you. God bless you.
Uncle Ralph.
I know that. But he passed the Butch Lewis Act, President Biden. So all of our pensions in the United States of America, all pensions are solvent for 30 years. Everybody's pension. So that's a good thing. But back to what Kerry was asking, Marion, you hit the nail on the head with Dummy George, because I never will forget working there with Johnny Hartman and Pistol Allen. That was just a wonderful experience for me. And also I actually traveled with O.C. Smith for many years, and I played there with him. And I got to tell you something, it breaks my heart. I think about this all the time, but that's the place where Jerry Allen played her first gig.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Dummy George, because she always reminded me of that. She said, Ralph, you gave me my first gig, and then Teddy Harris moved off the piano. She used to have me rolling about that, but it was such a classy place. And also the great Lottie the Body was the host.
Oh,
yes,
boy.
she was. Yes, she was. That was where I first met Lottie. Yep, she was the host.
Ralph, so
and that's where she molested me too.
So Ralph,
you lucky dog.
Ralph, can you explain what that means?
Lottie the Body?
Yeah.
Who is she? Yeah, people don't know.
She was a famous dancer. She used to work at the Flame Show Bar, and she worked for Ziggy Johnson all around Detroit. She originally was from New York. She was married to one of the Harlem Globetrotters, Goose Tatum. And she had a body. She would even dance with a snake. Let me tell you something. Men would wreck their Cadillacs looking at Lottie. She looked good as a bacon egg sandwich. I've been fasting for 9 weeks. That's how she looked. And scared me to death. I was about a little younger than Ibrahim. All I know is I said, Mama! but okay, now let me get serious. I'm kind of joyful today, so I'm glad to make this age. I never thought I would make it. But the Village Vanguard was special to me in New York too. And that's one of the places, because all of my mentors came to see me when I was with Jerry Allen, like Ron Carter, Buster Williams, and Reggie Workman, and I was scared to death. I had to play that night. And every one of them, Ibrahim, analyzed the way I was playing. Because they schooled me. Ron Carter says, "You did pretty good. Your technique was a little shabby, but it was good." And then Buster Williams says, "The bass is a little too dark. Y'all sound like Jameson, a little too dark, And Reggie Workman was the nicest one. "I really like what you're doing." But they always came out, and that was an honor for me. Really was an honor. And playing at Baker's was a great place. I worked there with Kenny Burrell and Milt Jackson for many years. Hugh Lawson, Grady Tate, So I've been blessed. I'm old. I've played, and I want to say one thing, Marion, the older you get, the better you look.
Look out now. Look out now.
Thank you, brother.
Man, you look like one of them movie stars.
I remember a Jerry gig in New York at the Knitting Factory, and Ornette came in. He turned 60. He spent his whole birthday with us, and it was a really, really hip. But I remember seeing Ralph with the Mahavishnu Orchestra at the Masonic Temple, and he killed everybody.
Everybody.
He killed everybody. It was wonderful.
No, thank you. Well, I appreciate that, because I never will forget the time of us being over in France together. You remember that?
Yeah.
You were playing with James. It was Jaribu or something else. Man. He's been all over the planet Earth. I'm glad to see you back here, man. Call me sometime.
Yeah, I've been back for a while. When I first came home, I was going out enough, but now I'm gonna have to join the fray like everybody else.
Yeah, everybody. Where am I going? I haven't flown an airplane in a year.
Well, what's funny, when you talk about traveling, I think a lot of people, like myself, when I first got around musicians, I thought they were just magical creatures that went about the planet, that never had any problems and never had to overcome any adversity. And I can remember when Marion was playing a gig, and I saw her in the repair shop, and I said, "Marion, what are you doing in the repair shop?" She said, "Well, the bottom of my bass broke." And so think about, and this is a crazy question, but think about a gig you were on and you had an equipment malfunction, and you're the bass player, right? Look at Marion shaking her head. She's like, "Oh, Lord Jesus." So you had an equipment malfunction. The band is leaning on you. And I think a lot of people don't get it. If you're the bass player, if we fail, everything fails. So kind of share a story where you overcame. And it's funny because when I talked about where you traveled, I know Ralph has been probably in the Swedish Alps and probably got his car broke down and got chased by an abominable snowman. So think about a situation that was crazy and you had to overcome because the show must go on. So Marion's beaming. So we're going to start with you, Marion. You're muted, Marion.
I got you. Yeah, no, I'm here. Yeah, just so many. So many. I'll give two short ones. Well, the first one probably was, and this I consider to be my own fault, although it was something that happened on stage. So, and I'm pretty sure, I was on a concert gig. I was touring. In fact, I think these are two tour stories. Tales from the Road with Straight Ahead. One was I was playing. I don't know if I was playing my bass or a bass that was given to me at the gig, or backline bass. But anyways, upright bass, and the A string broke while I was playing it on the stage, right? And there was just no stopping the show to do anything about that. And I'm sure these other bass players can relate to this. So at that point, I had to figure out how to negotiate the bass. Luckily, there's redundancy on the instrument, and so you can't. Once you get past about fourth position on the E string, you are redundant to the A string for the most part. So the third position anyway. So I was like, okay, so if you could just see me. So I had to finish the whole gig that way. And then not until afterwards did I tell the band that, yeah, I was I was on 3 strings for that that gig. And luckily they did not notice, which was, to my credit. So there's the one. The second story I'll tell you, this one was really good. We were at the Harambe Festival in Pittsburgh, and we did a sound check. I left my bass on the stage, came back, and after sound check, one of the techs had knocked my bass over, and it could not be played. I was just there's no way to play that bass. And luckily, we had about an hour before we were supposed to do the gig, and a cat went to his home. A guy who, if I wish I could remember his name, but I'm going to go through my archives. He went to his home and got a bass that belonged to his mother, who was a bass player with the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, which won't mean anything to many people, but for some of you all that know something about the history of music, that was an all-female band that was touring in the late 1940s from a place called the Piney Woods School down south. And so the International Sweethearts of Women, all female band. His mom used to play in that band, and he went and got me his mother's bass, and that's what I played for that gig. And so that was really, really meaningful. But yeah, so like I said, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to make it through the gig, and then you can break down afterwards.
Well, ever since we got past being able to bring your own bass, it's no telling what you might get. And the only time I played with Mal Waldron was on a completely unplayable instrument. The guy that played before me said, he handed me the bass, he said, "Good luck." And I looked at this bass and oh man, awful. So when I saw Ron Carter wasn't taking a bass, I knew it was officially over. I got a Colstein flat case that just sits in the corner.
Yeah, I have to say this. Jaribu was the first person to ever loan me a Colstein flat case. Remember that, Jaribu? Mm-hmm. And he showed me how to put a bass in too.
Now this thing fits in a golf bag. Wow. The neck comes off. It fits in a golf bag, and I only took it to Chicago, but at least I'm able to travel with it. If I want to take a bass, I can take this.
Beautiful.
And when you travel with something that looks like golf clubs, they treat you different.
Oh. So Chuck, share your horror story gone bad, wound up with a happy ending story.
I just always seem to break bass strings at the wrong time. I can go 5 years without breaking a string, and then I broke 2 in a row at a really big show recently, right in the finale of the song, where it was pretty dependent. My bass line was kind of what was driving the bus on the thing, and I had to really, really improvise to get through it. They were like these heavy flats that broke, the E and the A string of all things, and it was panic time, but I got through it. And some people seem to be impressed in the audience that I managed to break 2 heavy strings like that. So there was that as well. And then another time I was driving to a pretty big gig for us. We were playing the King Cobra Jazz Festival in Flint, and my Ford Escort blew 2 rods just outside of Flint. So I pulled it into a gas station and I sold it to the mechanic for $75. And I grabbed my bass and I literally ran all the way to downtown Flint and made it to the gig on time.
That is great. You sold the car for $75.
Yeah, I pulled it in. He's like, this car's screwed, dude. I'll give you $75 for it. So I was like, cool. Took the money and ran to the King Cobra Festival back when I could run.
Must go on.
What's
so
that?
Eve, what do you got?
Mine is, I'm just enjoying everybody's stories. All these guys are legends up here. But mine is similar to everybody else's. I was on a show with the Spinners a couple of years, 5 years ago, and I was playing on my electric bass, and the G string popped, and they didn't know. But I ended up having to play the whole show, without the G string, which I really missed. But I had to play it. I just had to totally change up how I was playing. I'm so used to playing the music a certain way. I had to play everything on the E, on the B, E, A, and D string, and it was hell. And then, but I made it through it. It kind of was a happy ending, like Marion's. They didn't really know because I I just played everything kind of in the low register instead of, kind of going high, which is what you're supposed to do anyway, I guess. And then I guess on the other story, there's a lot of stories, but the other one happened 2 years ago. I was on the Blue Note Jazz Cruise with Dave, and I have the bass, actually have the same bass just like Jaribu. I have it right here.
No, you got that
I
Japanese
have one of
one.
these.
This is the Eminence.
Yeah, I got yours. Yeah, I know what kind. Yeah, but mine's is similar. Like mine's is a landscape. Anyway, I had this bass on a gig with him, and I had it wrapped up well, and I didn't have a flight case because they don't make a flight case for those. But I had it wrapped up, and anyway, they normally let you check those in when you go on the airplane. You take them with you, and then they put them in like where the strollers are, and I have everything labeled, be fragile. Anyway, he threw the thing. I saw the guy when he did. He threw my bass where you put those strollers and stuff at, and ended up tearing up my whole bridge. So I didn't know it until I got on a cruise ship and saw it, and I had to basically they knocked the things that actually raised the height of the bridge. All that got messed up, so I had to play the whole gig with strings like super high until I was able to get back to Detroit to fix everything. But the bridge, they messed up my bridge, and that was a killer.
Wow.
See, that was heartbreaking. I was able to get through the show, but I didn't have any leverage on how, we like to raise our strings to a certain height when we play if we have an adjustable bridge. And when he threw it, he ended up messing up the whole thing on the Delta Airlines. So the happy ending of that story is, the show must go on.
Must go on.
Like Marion said, the show goes on, period. And I was able to make it through it, but it was just, it's like everybody else said, it's just uncomfortable. You just got to battle through it. But yeah, my bridge got messed up. That was a killer. So now I got it. I have a different case now, and I bubble. Actually, I had it bubble wrapped pretty good then, but that was the first time somebody actually threw my bass like that. Normally, when they check it in easy. When you check it in with strollers and everything, it's treated as fragile equipment. But I saw the guy when he did it, and my heart dropped. So that's my story.
I was expecting to hear stories of people with mistaken identity being caught by the paparazzi or the international police and taken into prison for 32 days. We're talking about broken equipment. So, Ralph, let's hear your story, sir.
I have too many. I've been trying to pick one. It's just been so many, even with the electric bass. I'll be very brief, but I've had a lot of encounters with bad electric basses.
Oh.
I never will forget, I was playing at Avery Fisher in New York with John McLaughlin.
Wow.
And my fabulous red precision bass, fretless, stopped working because the jack inside, all the wires got frayed. So Greg DeJoven had to take the damn thing apart. Luckily, I had another bass, and I played the jazz bass for the concert. But I got a story I was thinking about. I went to Zurich, Switzerland. It had to be in the 90s. And I was over there with, I think it was James Carter. So they gave me this bass. It looked like it belonged to Laurel and Hardy. It was a German bass made out of plywood with the top was caved in, and the strings they had enough sludge. You could take a lighter and just set the thing on fire with the grease that was on the strings. And the sound post was gone. There was no sound post in the damn thing. The strings was high enough to get a nosebleed. So I told her, I can't play this shit. I was mad as hell. And they were speaking French and German. And finally, this guy came over to me. He was, I think it was Stanley Clark's roadman. He says, Mr. Armstrong, Stanley Clark is here. I said, well, call him, tell him I need to play his bass. It was Stanley and Lenny. And a matter of fact, it was Chick Corea's group. It was Return to Fest. They were playing over in Zurich. So Stanley said he thought he was dreaming that I was over in Switzerland. So he said, yeah. So I ended up playing Stanley Clarke's bass on the gig. And that was a hell of a story because Lenny White and Stanley Clarke abused me the whole night. They were throwing grapes at me, talking about, man, don't you break that bass. Don't you tear up that bass. You know, we're old friends. We started out, you know. So that was one incident and the Avery Fisher, but I've had so many of them. You know, this is the last one I'm gonna tell you about. I went to LA. This is with Jerry Allen. I was playing at Catalina's. So I had the famous Colstein case. I'm going to LA with my Steiner, which is my baby.
I didn't know.
And I had everything packed in their foam. I get to LA, I get to the hotel. Yeah, I'm ready to hit. Oh, I'm feeling good, man. I pull that sucker out. I said, yes, it's in one piece. And then finally I pull the bass up and the neck came off in my hand. Woo! So if it wasn't for James Leary, I wouldn't have made the gig. James Leary lent me his bass, but rest in peace. We
Ralph,
just lost.
Can you tell the story about how you found that Steiner?
Oh, wow. You really going back. Now, that's a doggone shame. My bass came out of a monastery.
Wow.
It's called, and it's still there. Matter of fact, Ibrahim, you played at the building. It's over on Seneca and Seminole Street. It's called St. Catherine, St. Edwards. And I was going there for Catholic school. And the bass was in deplorable condition. And the teacher said, look, I'm going to give you this bass. You keep this bass. Da, 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 da. And I got an 1847 Steiner right out of St. Catherine, St. Edwards. And the bass is worth about 20 grand or something. You know, but it's the sound. It's an old, it's like an Amati. It has a sweet, sweet vibrating sound.
Mm. Wasn't it in a box in pieces?
It was close to it.
Yeah.
It was like you could put an umbrella in the back of it. It was wide open. That bass has had thousands of dollars worth of restoration work. And it still needs to be revarnished.
Wow.
Well, you got a good memory, Jaribu.
I want to leave some time open to talk about whatever you want to talk about, because as I was sitting there listening to all these stories, you know, if you think about what this music does, the bass, and how we all came to it, and some of your best memories, I think about stories like little kids that walked up and touched the bass or touched you or really let you know that what you were doing was meaningful. So I'm just going to leave some open space to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So Jaribu, you got the mic and looks like you're ready to go. So talk about whatever you want to talk about that relates to music and bass.
Well, I just remember that I just remember that everything came to me. I didn't, you know, I wasn't trying to get nothing. I met Kamal. He's responsible for whatever degree of musical common sense I developed. And then I met Roscoe and these guys. And the thing that changed me probably more than any one thing, other than meeting people like Farouk and, well, I listened to music a long time before I tried to play it. And so I wasn't searching for a style. I wasn't searching for a vibe. I already knew what I liked and what I didn't like. Might be the only benefit of starting late is that I was already an experienced listener. But I got to tell you this Ray McKinney story because it shows how gracious he was. Harold was playing with, I think, Kenny Burrell in Ann Arbor Festival, and Sun Ra was on the bill. And so Ray knew I was into Sun Ra's music, so he took me up there, gave me a chance to meet Sun Ra. Of course, Sun Ra didn't have a bass player with him because at that time I didn't know anything about being in Sun Ra's band. So they asked Ray, and Ray looked at the guys and he pointed to me. He said, "No, this is the guy that you want." Wow. And so I went home and got my bass and came back and played with Sun Ra that night. A couple of days later, he called me to go on the road, and then I ended up living with him at the house in Philadelphia. And the music that happened in the house was different than anything on the road. And I mean, talking about something that alters your spirit. It was just absolutely amazing to be around somebody on that level talking about somebody who arranged for Fletcher Henderson and the closest thing to the living embodiment of the entire history of this music in one guy.
Wow.
If you ask me. And I had the pleasure one time, one night that really stands out for me was Sun Ra. We did, I think it was 10 days at the Jazz Center in the Rose. And at the same time, we did a DIA concert with Roscoe Mitchell. So in the same day, I did every set with Sun Ra. I mean, with Sun Ra except one set, which was when I played that same night with Roscoe Mitchell at the DIA. So considering the kind of music that I was into, playing with those two good people in the same night, that was just the epitome for me.
Wow. Touching story. Ibrahim, what do you want to share? What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind? Everything bass.
I guess growing up, going to rehearsals with my dad when I was a kid, you know, and listening to, as a kid, listening to Marion, you know, I love jazz music, and growing up listening to Marion, listening to Ralphe, Jaribu, you know, just sitting in the basement and going to rehearsals, seeing Kenny Cox's band, and just growing up learning that whole style, listening to great players like them, and just from being around my dad, you know, being around Harold McKinney, just a lot of them are here, you know, of course Marcus and Ray McKinney. I just growing up, going to a lot of rehearsals with my father and listening to all of them play is just priceless. And you know, if I could go back in time, I'd do it again, just so I could, just like a kid in the candy store listening to those great players, you know, and how they played the music, and I just try to learn everything I could, you know, watching them play, you know, from that circuit is priceless, and I miss those days, you know, growing up as a kid. I caught the tail end of it. You know, I'm 40 now, so I'm still young, but I'm kind of crossing over to that not so young. But I just miss going to a lot of rehearsals with my father and seeing all the great players that aren't with us anymore.
Yeah, that's love. That's love there.
And I got a lot of old tapes. The other day I was listening to when my father died, I have all his old tapes and stuff like that, and I would go back and listen to a lot of things, and the conversations were hilarious. Man, I can't say it here, but just going to a lot of the rehearsals when I was a kid and listening to those guys play is you know, I really that's what motivated me to play. You know, it motivated me to play, and I love it. You know, I just miss those days.
Wow.
They're not, you know, Kasuku Mafia. Just listening to all of those guys, Kenny, the Endangered Species. You know, Robert Allen was one of my favorite bass players. Rod Hicks. Just growing up listening to all those guys. You know, other than the ones on this panel too. Those are the ones I really miss. Just hearing those guys play, and it is a big part of why I wanted to play bass. You know.
Perfect.
And when I was at Cass, you know, I got a chance to talk to Buster when they came and did workshops where Frank Foster came and Buster was with him, and Buster, you know, gave me some pointers. And I just remember his hands looking like bricks. that guy's hand was huge. Yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling, but I just miss the days of being a kid going to rehearsals with my dad.
Perfect. We got a couple. Giselle's
dad,
hand up. What do you got for us, Giselle?
My question was for Ralphe. If you remember, back in the late 80s, I was a sergeant in charge of the Shrine Circus on the afternoon.
Hell, could I forget that?
And I heard this booming bass coming from the Shrine Circus band. And it was only one little black spot up there, and that was Ralphe. And I was had to keep the people from going in where the lions and the elephants and all those were, because that was my job as a sergeant on afternoons. And I went up and sat next to Ralph, and I know I was smelling like elephants and everybody, because I didn't know anybody else there. And it was the Shrine Circus and all the Shriners, you know, no disrespect to anybody on this panel. Everybody there was white, but me and Ralph. So I'm like, wow, there's a bass player up in the band. And I went up there and Ralph was playing this oompa, you know, the music for the Shrine Circus. And then he would leave there and go do like Bakers or somebody after doing all this Shrine Circus music. I was like, how do you keep it separated? But that was back like the late 80s, Ralph. It was long.
Hey, and that was a prime job. I was working, that was a union job. And I was working for Joe Vitale. You know, the great, I don't know if you remember him, Kerry. He used to talk like one of the mafioso guys. Hey with me. You all have Cadillacs. And I say, yeah, 1918 Cadillac. But that was a prime job. I was blessed to do those jobs. I've done a lot of jobs that, I hate to tell you this, that say they wouldn't hire Black people, but I was blessed that they hired me for my ability. And we were doing this snake dancer, Tahar. And it was, you know, the music was, it was intricate. You know, it was like, da 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 dun 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 ba ba dee ba da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. And then we had to play for the clowns. But I must admit, I really enjoyed hanging out with circus performers. And for you who like cannabis, they would blow weed into the bear cages at night. And the bears would run everywhere. I had so much fun doing that, but that's a great memory to tell. It really is.
So we've got another hand up. Pamela Everett. So Pam, what's your question or your comment?
My question is, what is the difference between the stand-up bass and the other bass, and why did you choose the one that you play?
So do you have that for any particular person, or who would you like to direct it to, Pam?
It doesn't matter.
Well, I think Marion's up, so we're going to toss it to Marion.
All right. The difference between the stand-up bass and electric bass? Yeah. Well,
I just know that some play it the stand up, and then there's the other one. I don't know how many basses there are, but I know that those are two different ones.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you are most definitely right. I would say the primary difference is that the big ones they call the stand-up bass, also known as the double bass, the bull fiddle, upright bass, right? That instrument is hollow on the inside. And so the sound is produced from all by itself. In other words, we have some apparatus, some things that we can actually attach to the instrument, so we can put it through an amplifier. But even if you don't have that, if we play our upright basses, our bass violins or acoustic basses, you can still hear the bass. And that's a really nice thing about an upright bass. Whereas with an electric bass, it's also actually called electric bass guitar, right? So it's played like a guitar, and it actually has a solid body, and you have to use it has pickups that are attached to it so that you can actually hear the instrument. Now there's actually, the good thing that you asked, there's kind of some things now that are kind of some middle ground things between the electric bass guitar and the upright bass, right? And so those are, in fact, I've got one of those, and they've got some electric uprights, and they've actually been around for quite a while. One of the first ones that was on the scene was one called the Ampeg Baby Bass, and that's where especially a lot of the musicians in the that play a lot of the Latin styles of music, especially Puerto Rican and Cuban musicians, they use that bass, and it's kind of a hybrid. So it still is a solid body, but you actually play it like an upright bass. And I think it just depends on the person who, you know, what you would, how you want to express yourself with, you know. Of course, both of those instruments work better in certain kinds of music too. I personally try to put my upright in all kinds of situations because I really love that. But you can, you can play electric bass playing straight up jazz. Certainly had a lot of people doing that. You can, if you go out to see, certain players, they got wah-wah pedals on their electric basses. You can put all kinds of effects and choruses on that. That's been going on for years, ever since actually early Weather Report in the late 1960s. People have been putting pedals on upright basses.
Miroslav, all those folks,
There
yeah.
you go. Yeah, that's been going on for a long time. So you can be real expressive with the bass in so many different ways. Yeah.
I like to interject one thing real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to do that, we just lost him about a month ago, and his name was Melvin Jackson.
Wow.
Oh, sure.
Funky Skull.
Yeah.
He was the very first bass violinist to use effects on the bass. Nobody did it before Funky Skull. Nobody. And the first person to actually use a pickup on the bass was Oscar Pettiford.
Wow.
He was the first, yeah. And then Ray Brown actually perfected the transducer with Tommy Gamina with Polytone back in the late 60s. Yeah.
And it's
so
real.
Sheila, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I wanted to know, because I've seen, well, Ralph, when you're playing, how you go into where it's almost like you're a guitar player and leading. And so how do you all play where there's maybe two bass players? And how do you know, which one do you normally gravitate to? The one that stays on the low of it or the lead? You know what I mean?
Well, the reason why I use the effects and emulate the sound of a guitar, because I'm using three people. There's your husband, he knows about it. That I'm using effects so we can do more things, because the bass for many years has had up to 9 strings at one time. Going back 300 years ago. This is really nothing new, because you have to understand the viol was here before the organ and the piano.
Wow.
That viol, that religious instrument that we play, the bass viol.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of went down to, in the later half of the 1800s, it went to 3 strings. Most countries played 3 strings. Each country had their own tuning. But in 1778, Karl Ludwig Bachmann from the King's Court of Prussia actually added the 4th string on, the contrabass, on order from the King of Prussia.
Wow. Wow. So for all of you, which is your favorite?
He was a blacksmith.
Yeah. Which is your favorite style of or genre of music do you love to play? Like some love pop, some love jazz, and or just the different. What is it that you really love to dig into and gives you the most freedom? What style of music?
So Chuck, why don't you grab that first? Been kind of quiet up there.
Yeah, it's still quiet.
You muted. Muted, Chuck.
I was just listening. I'm learning a lot, to be honest. Yeah, I tend to gravitate towards because I mainly play electric bass. I just got an upright actually in late February. I got an old K, so I'm starting from scratch, and I don't anticipate doing anything with it anytime soon. So me being primarily an electric player, I gravitate towards a lot of the electric stuff. I like a lot of blues and funk and rock and jazz, kind of all within the circle of that, the fusion of all those things together, all those different bands, anything from Weather Report, Tower Power, stuff like that, tends to be what my ear gravitates towards.
Can I say something? I like every damn thing, pretty much. My favorite, I must admit, is nothing like the walking bass, violin. I love the rich legato sound of a bass violin, the warmth of it, you know. But then I like to hear the electric bass. When Larry Graham slaps the bass. Larry Graham played my bass one day, and I told him, Larry, you can't play my bass no more. He pulled the A string almost an inch. I never seen anybody do this without pulling the string off the bridge. He pulled it with his thumb. I never seen anything like that. So I love the bass, period. I'm a bass fanatic. I used to sleep with the bass. When I was a kid, my mother, it's a true story. I got to run this on you. You should never give me a microphone. So my mother was going to work, you know, she had to go to work in the morning. So it was a Thursday night, about 11:45. I heard the door, boom, kick in. My mother said, if you don't stop playing that goddamn record scratching X bass, I'm gonna cut the strings off of it. I said, okay, Mom, I will stop. You know, I was fanatical about the instrument because the bass actually is a spiritual instrument. It's a religious instrument. You know, Gregorian chants were written for this instrument. That's why it has a scroll. See, people have a misconception. That instrument Jaribu has in his hand, that was here before all of the violins, the violas, the cellos. That's first, baby. The bass violin. And also, I hear people call it the upright bass. Now, technically, the upright bass is the name for what instrument? The tuba. Really? Because 1940, the tuba was the main instrument in jazz. So the bass violin, you know, the name for the bass violin is time bass. In the 40s, our instrument was called the string bass because the tuba was the main instrument. Then in 1949, when Leo Fender invented the electric bass and Israel Crosby used it with Cab Calloway in 1950, that became, the term went to the bass violin, upright bass, because people were switching to electric.
And the term string bass differentiates it from the from brass bass, which came before it. There's a wonderful Fletcher Henderson record where Coleman Hawkins is playing bass saxophone.
Oh, okay.
So when you call it a bass, you're only talking about a roll or a frequency area.
Yeah.
You know. You don't call a guitar a treble.
Right. So speaking of that, do any folks on the panel play key bass? So I know Phil does, but I know when you're talking about different types of music that you love, but I remember the disco era, and some people hated key bass, but I can tell you that's when I bought my first 5-string bass, so I could play Let's Hear It for the Boy, because it had those low notes, as we're talking about the bass register, that wasn't on a 4-string, and I wasn't going to detune. But do any folks play key bass on the panel?
Not in front of anybody.
I play a little bit of it.
Yeah,
I got something. Yeah, I'm a historian. I got to tell you something. Now, check this out. Where did low B come from? Everybody think, oh yeah, we're doing a lot of 5-string. Do you know where low B came from?
Oh no, Anthony Jackson.
No, string.
That's my buddy.
Classical.
Look, low B came from, that's right, classical. It came from the composition, The Pines of Rome. Respighi had all of the bass players in a Roman opera orchestra tune their bass down to low B in that composition. That's where it came from. And back then, the circumference of a string, a D string or A string, was about the size of a quarter. So it was very easy.
And then Ralph, then where did the extension come from on the string bass?
A man named Pogi Gleasos. I always get his pronunciation wrong. Pogi Gleasos in 1869 in Hampshire, England, invented the low C extension. Yeah.
So going back, Phil's your hand up?
Yeah.
I'm done.
I like this night because I'm looking up and I'm looking at every player that's up here. Everybody is such a particular different type player. even though a lot of you guys might play some of the same kind of music, but everybody is so individually different. And I see a guy who can do modern day hip hop and like that. He does a lot of modern day music and reaches deep into the old tradition. And you got somebody like Jaribu who can play in the avant-garde. You know, when I first saw him, it was with Griot Galaxy at the festivals, but they were also playing at the Delta Lady back in those days too, right?
Yeah.
You guys did a lot of Delta Lady. I never could find the place, okay? I was a kid, and when I started driving, I really wanted to go to the Delta Lady because of the way you guys were playing. But tell me about that difference in the genres, man. What was it like playing with the art ensemble as opposed to playing more modern style gigs, Jaribu?
Well, you know, if you listen to Malachi and Famadou, you know, you can tell they play black music, whatever form it comes in. And I always felt it was an extension of the other things. I mean, when I play free, I consider it still swing. And I think that's a big difference between what we did and what you hear a lot of Europeans do and like that. But that's what was key about Detroit. I remember playing with J.C. Hurd and playing with Farouk at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know any other place where you can do that like we did in those days. I mean, playing with a big band, playing with a small group, civic orchestra, you know, I mean, all at the same time. And what I feel bad for is I wonder how these young people put their music together without places to play.
Well, what was the atmosphere that allowed you to end up playing in that, you know, art ensemble type zone? What got you over there in the first place? Because nobody, I don't see none of the young guys right now. Nobody's nowhere near that.
Well, you know, I listened to, like I said before, I listened to music for years before I tried to play it. My first jazz record was Ascension.
Okay.
And the next one was Atlantis by Sun Ra. I went into Vaughn's bookstore and I saw this cat with these rays coming out of his head. I said, "Oh man, what is this?" And I took it home and it turned out to be Atlantis.
Wow.
So I mean, I was into it. I mean, a lot of people don't even they don't listen to. I mean, you can't get people to turn their radio a notch over for something they don't recognize. So it's just about how curious are you. I want to hear the way the birds sing. You know, I'm influenced by the wind. You know.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about it, Jaribu. There's a question in the chat, and I'll throw it out to the group. It says, "How many of you write your own compositions, and can you speak to writing music?" I remember a story about Ralph, and there was he had wrote a song on the B side of the John McLaughlin record, and it wound up on a television commercial, I think, if I'm telling the story right. And it's interesting how those things come. And Jaribu just talked about how he's inspired. He wants to hear the birds sing. Can you talk to some of the compositionally, what you've done and the writing of your music? And I'll start with Marion on this one. You're muted.
Yes, no, yep, I'm right here. Well, I'll just say that for me, writing music has been a natural progression. That was something that I heard a lot of especially from the ones that were my mentors in the community. And, you know, speaking specifically, people, of course, I had women mentors, which was really wonderful. People like Ursula Walker and Naima Chamberzé, who are two women that are still luckily right here on the planet and still sounding fabulous. But a lot of my male mentors were also really engaged a lot in composition. Folks like Wendell Harrison, Marcus Belgrave, Donald Walden, Ken Cox, and Roy Brooks, and Charles Bowles. So those folks were really not only musicians, but their expression of their musicality through their compositions was really an important part of their creative practice. So I just felt that that was something that I would have to just kind of leap out there and do. I think it's always risky to do your own work, to compose your own music, because you really are putting yourself out there in a whole nother way to do that. but I think it's really important. And so I've had a chance to actually compose quite a few things. One of the people I've worked with as an arranger has been Buddy Butson, who is also a fantastic composer and arranger. So I've written two suites of music that Buddy, actually three suites, I think, that Buddy was involved with me. One was for was based on the book of Ruth, that I actually wrote two of them that were engaged in kind of more biblical themes. One was based on the book of Job. That was a double quartet, string quartet and jazz quartet. And then I wrote one on the life of the enslaved poet Phyllis Wheatley. And so that was, those were things that just kind of were bubbling around in my mind. And I've had a couple of recent things. My last one was called Highland Park City of Ogun. And that was a whole suite of music. Along with some spoken words, some poetry, and some other infused dialogue about the city of Highland Park and its journey through the years. So my family and I live here in the city. So I think, composing is really important.
Marion, you talked earlier about your 6-year stint with Straight Ahead. How was it different writing for yourself or writing as a band?
That band's been together for really over 20 years. So that's a long, lots of great. Well, you know what? I think that I like to think about the way Duke Ellington thought about music, which is you write specifically for people. If you know who you're writing for. So anything that I did that was specifically for Straight Ahead, then I thought a lot about, which I still do write things for that band. I try to think about, who's in that band, that rhythm section of Alina Moore and Galen McKinney, a very powerful rhythm section. I know those musicians well. I know what kinds of things they bring to the bandstand, what's going to click with them. I think I have a good idea about that. And then I also know something of the personality of the band, how it likes to project itself in terms of using vocals and instruments together in the front line, not just necessarily just vocals, but having that together. And so it really does make a difference. I just think you really knowing what your voices are, who your voices are, and having somebody in mind.
Absolutely.
When you compose.
And I mentioned that Ralph did a composition that was with John McLaughlin. So Ralph, I don't know what else you've written, but Ralph, can you talk about your writing and compositionally with different styles and different bands?
Man, let me think about this. I've written a lot of different styles of music. Recently I did a recording called Detroit Rising, and I wrote a song called Blue Mashed Potatoes dedicated to Frank Zappa. And it's kind of a jovial song, and it's been very successful. It's on YouTube, and I own it, just like all my compositions. That's why I try to instill in a lot of musicians, make sure you have your copyright together. That's very important, because that song you were talking about, you said it was on the B-side of John McLaughlin. It's, if you look it up, it's one of the most sampled songs in the world, next to some of James Brown's compositions.
Wow.
Planetary Citizen. And I've got lawsuits. I'm still suing people over that damn song. And what's so killing about it, it was used in an Adidas commercial.
That's what I remember.
Once I got some attorneys, I think I got Arnold, what was his name? He's dead now. Arnold Rothstein out in Bingham Farms. So he looked it up. He said, Mr. Armstrong, this is from the motion picture Sliver. So I ended up with Robert Osterberg with Abraham Frain and Swab out of New York, and found out that my music was used in the motion picture with Sharon Stone and Alec Baldwin.
Oh.
I'm singing in the love scene with my corny voice, screaming that, So anyway, it was a wonderful thing. I had very good lawyers, and I ended up paying off a house, sent 3 kids to college. And I've been blessed, I don't have to go out in a snowstorm to pay the rent. That's one great thing. But on my recent stuff now, with this, my other song, Blue Mashed Potatoes, And I love this song. Is I tell you, it's doing really well. It's a blues. And I've got a video on YouTube with QB, the the lady. She has a behind like a Lincoln Continental. And she's dancing on it. And it's a serious song because it's about a man that was in love with this, ugly woman, and she was grinding up Viagra in his mashed potatoes. Got quiet, didn't it?
That's kind of quick.
But anyway, I like music like that, and I've got on the same CD I wrote a tribute to Jaco Pastorius. I got one to Larry Coryell. I write all kind of genres of music. I got a lot of Miles Davis in. Because Miles always, when I was with Miles, he was always saying, write something hip. He was always abreast of what young people were listening to.
Amen.
So that's a lot that's instilled in me, even with John McLaughlin. I like traditional jazz. Don't get me wrong. I'm a bebopper. I'm an old school bebop cat, but I still like what's hip, social music. Just like Ibrahim. Ibrahim play any kind of damn music.
Every generation is supposed to add something to this music. And
thank you, Jaribu.
When we had that generation that decided everything stopped in the 60s, that did a disservice to this music.
My man. Thank you. My man.
I just want to add something. I'm looking up here. I see Kerry, Lacy. I see Chuck Bartels. Both of you guys, back in the 90s, we were hippied up and playing down in my basement, and we were making it up on the spot, and we were coming up with the unknown. I just want to let you know that I still go back and I still have recordings. I still got some of those recordings. I do have you, Kerry. I do. I have that recording on a cassette tape. I just don't have a cassette tape player, but I'm going to get one. But I still have that recording. I got the stuff I did with Chuck down there. And when I met Chuck, I'd already been playing with his cousin, Charles, prior to that time. And Charles was like, well, I got another cousin that plays bass, man. He's a monster. And then a few years later, Chuck is in the scene, and we were doing stuff in the basement. Then we played together with Thornetta, and he's just stepped off into a whole platform of opportunities from there. But I do remember, and I loved playing our old hippie stuff down in the basement big time. It's just brand new. Like, it's just like when the guys prior to us, Train and Miles, they were coming up with their own idea about what music was. I just want to ask, how across the panel do you look at that thing, trying to uphold the tradition as opposed to finding the new?
Creating the new.
What's the unknown? How do you look at that, or do you see much of it when you're traveling around? I know some of these guys are complete tradition upholders, but
well, what's funny is, I don't play and don't passion myself to play as much as any of these folks on the panel, but I can tell you, when Phil spoke up, and I still have the T-shirt that says Phil Harmonic on it, so I still have that. I don't know if it fits anymore, but
you got on the wall, right?
Well, look,
yeah.
Look,
I can tell you that I have seen all of these guys teaching, and Phil, to your point, I just want to chime in and have a stepping off point. It warms my heart to see people giving back, because like we're going to get older, and you have to leave something for the next generation. Mm-hmm. I've given everything I had musically to my kids. The young man that was here earlier, his name is Hakeem Weatherspoon. He's now playing with some of the jazz greats, but he's a spoken word artist. And I'm just really excited about the music schools. I know Ralphe has been teaching in colleges and university. And when I see that people are having master classes and you're giving back, even though they may not love the old traditional music, it's such a rich.
Uh-oh, he froze.
You froze, Kerry.
I'll just say that fresh makes old new. I listen old.
Kerry back yet? No, not yet.
I listen to old so I can hear new. And when I hear new, I try to find good old in it that gives me some inspiration. I play with Eve every weekend, and sometimes we have no idea what's going to happen. but he's got a long tradition. You know, he comes from that old tradition. His father and like that, his parents, they instilled a whole lot of tradition in him. Yet he can come out and he can play a really kick-ass new. And so I let him guide me. I let him guide me on gigs. As long as him and the bass and the drummer, if him and the drummer link up, then I can play in trio mode like with Ebe. And when Ralph calls me over to do the gig over at Baker's, if I got a kick-ass rhythm section, it will help me to accomplish my goal. How do you like the drummers? Okay, how do you like playing with drummers?
Yeah.
Let's go with that one.
Look, I just wanted to add something to that and say that there's a difference between being a traditionalist and being a clone. If you didn't have your own thing to say, you couldn't even hang out with them cats. So the idea of recreating something that's already been, that's not what's happening. When you listen to people like Perry Hughes, he's playing traditionally, but he sounds like Perry.
Yeah.
Now they reward people for sounding just like somebody else. And in my day, you failed if that's as far as you got.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of that has to do also with how people are learning the music. And I think there's a lot of good things about learning. There's a lot of good skills to be learned in the academy. First, I want to say that, in terms of, going through schools of music. I sent my son through a school of music at U of M. There's a lot of great skills, but I think my feeling is that the most powerful way to learn it is to take those skills and then go into a community setting and have to be able to actually apply those skills in a setting where you can't just get away with you playing a transcription of somebody else's solo. You have to actually internalize that and then come out, as Jaribu said, and be sounding like yourself, right? And on top of that, one does not do that in a couple of years. This is a journey of many years to get there. And I think one of the things that I think that happens a lot in schools, and it's just kind of part of the privilege of the academy, is that, they send you out and say, hey, you now have a degree in this, or maybe you even have a master's degree in this. But what does that really mean in terms of actually learning the music? What it means is that my feeling is that you have a learner's permit or an enhanced learner's
There
permit.
you go.
But you need to get in there and figure out what it is. And people say, well, I want to know my own sound. I'm like, come and talk to me about 15 years later. You'll know what you sound like then.
Mm-hmm.
But, you're not going to know what you sound like, 3 years out of undergraduate school, because you're just not. You need to get in there and be drill down into the music, and then you will find out what your sound is, where you're going. You will know what you don't know, which takes some time also. And it's I think there's just there's some of that. So thank you for that way of looking at it, Jaribu.
It's all good, but and that's like I said, fresh makes old new. I'm not saying that Keith Jarrett never had to play electric anything. You know what I'm saying? He continued on, and up to now, whatever condition, he's got a condition thing right now. But a player like that who is great at doing a thing, and that's what's driving their energy. That's very important to know as an artist, to say, well, my energy is continuing to give me stuff fresh, even if it's in the tradition. But some people are driven to make change. Eve is a young guy who plays tradition, but he's just by association with the people his age is going to bring something else to that picture. And I find it interesting, and I enjoy it. But I like it when I know that bass player and drummer are lined up. Tell me about you guys with the bass player and drummer until we can get Kerry back into the picture here.
I got something I would like to interject one thing. Since I'm sitting here, you coerced me into this.
Uh-oh.
It's all good. It's good to be home. Actually, I wanted to be home, but not like this with the pandemic, because I've been flying so much, I'm starting to grow feathers, but I'm starting to molt now. But I just want to give a shout out to two of my people here, and that's Jaribu, who used to sit next to me in biology, Miss Foda's room. You remember that?
I didn't remember the teacher's name because I was never there, neither were you.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
there. You were dang right.
She was my teacher too at Cass.
All he talked about was, man, I want a bass. I want to play the bass. I want to play the bass. I want to play the bass. And we just ignored the teacher. We probably got a double F. But also Marion Hayden, who I think is one of the most prominent bass players and one of the top bass players in the country, that I feel that she's not getting her proper due. And I know it's hard for women in the business, but this sister can do everything. And it made me feel good to hear you talk, Marion, about positions. And that's something that most bass players don't want to learn it the right way. I never will forget, James Jamerson was the first person to really explain the 12 positions that Yosef Habib invented. Never forget it as long as I live. And what kills me is everybody who wants to hear Jamerson, it's the amplifier, it's the labella string, it's the mute on the bass. Let me tell you something. I saw James Jamerson play a Paul McCartney Beatle bass with Carolyn Franklin, and guess what? He sounded just like Jamerson.
That's important. That's having a sound.
It's the sound.
Yeah.
You get it with your fingers. You create your own sound. And that's what I love about Marion. And Marion just has such a wonderful tone on the bass. You know, me and Ron Carter, every time I talk to Ron Carter, he says, how is Marion doing? Is she okay? I just say, I'm so proud of her. I'm just proud. That's my teacher. You know, Ron Carter had me play a C scale 1,482 times. I never forget, I almost cried. And he was watching the doggone basketball game, Jaribu with Walt Frazier, the Knicks. I'm sitting there, it's still not right. It doesn't sound musical.
All right, as a left-handed keyboard bass player, I'm going to go to a second. I'm going to ask this question.
Excuse me, I have a knock at the door.
One more time, I'm going to ask this weird question. Tell me about how you guys link your rhythm. You're basing your rhythm, like playing with drummers, and tell me about who's in charge of that. Did I interrupt?
No, you're good.
Is he okay? All right. Tell me about how you look at who's in charge of the rhythm, the bass player or the drummer?
The bass. No, we're a team.
Yes.
We're a team.
The bass is in charge of the rhythm.
Is that across the board? Chuck, is that across the board?
The bass is the timekeeper, in my opinion.
There we go. We got Kerry back. But go ahead. I'm really curious about this because when I play keyboard bass, I want to know what page I'm supposed to be on. And if somebody's dragging around, I'm always like, let's get lined up. I'm always trying to get alignment with the drummer. But how do you look at it when you're playing on gigs? You always have great drummers or what?
Most of the hippest music I remember listening to or being able to play was because drummers and bass players feel time the same way. And you play with and this movement, all of the good stuff evolved over time. People played together long enough to really understand each other, to take certain things for granted. You can go here because this guy is not going to fall apart. Like that. And it was different when I went to New York and everybody was in 900 different bands. And I heard so many wonderful musicians and so few good bands because people didn't really play together long enough to develop something special. And so I just think about me and Tiny, or you go to the Blue Note guys and there are these teams, Tony Williams, Ron Carter,
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly the case.
Well, it's interesting. Can you guys hear me? There we go.
Yeah.
Because I think, like I said, when I came to Detroit, it was 1975, and I played in church, and it was the organ was dominant then, but then the bass players and the drummers, it was about that pocket and about that groove. One of my favorite bass lines was "Give It to Me, Baby," Rick James, and that was all about the bass line. But if the drummer didn't lock, it just wasn't funky. You could get in the band and play your bass line great, but if the drummer's not locking, something is out, man, and it just don't work. And whether it was gospel, jazz, I remember I auditioned once for a rock band, and I was playing the notes right, but I wasn't playing with a rock feel, and I got fired or didn't get the gig. So it's when you say who's in charge, it better be a tag team, or it's not going to swing, or it's not going to be funky, or it's not going to sound like rock, or it's not going to sound like Rick James. And you'll notice that something is wrong. And, you know, think about this. Think about when you heard records where you could tell it was pop music played by jazz cats. Well, that wasn't right. Or if you heard jazz music played by rock musicians, you could tell something's off, man. So I think it has to be a rhythm section community. I think piano players get a pass because the drummers and the bass, once they set it and lay it down, everybody else kind of rides on top.
Exactly.
Sorry about that.
Was that a birthday gift there? Some flowers?
I just got some flowers from my brother, Michael Narda Wall.
Wow.
So I think the one of the points that I was trying to make was that if the bass and the drums are playing together and one of them leaves the thing, if the bass player is holding it, it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that that in general, my philosophy is to, first of all, just really try to make it happen. And the situations I find have been the best have been when it's obvious that me and a particular drummer have been referencing recordings that we obviously find mutually inspiring. So our approach is to, playing are going to be real similar. We already have some knowledge, but then there's times, where I definitely have had to bend to the will of whoever it was that I'm working on. I feel like that's also it's honorable to do so if that's what the situation requires. I remember working with I don't know if any of you cats some of you cats have probably worked with Louis Hayes, and Louis Hayes plays way up on top of the beat. So I know I'm more like a PC kind of person. I pretty much play on the beat or maybe a little bit above the beat on the front side. Louis Hayes plays way up in front of the beat. So if you're not playing where he's playing, you are not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to swing with Louis Hayes. I had to really, to just, fix my head around to be able to make that happen in a rhythm section with Louis that way. Roy Brooks, on the other hand, was actually more of like on the beat, just a little bit ahead of the beat. So different cats play differently, and I found depending on the circumstances, you have to be able to. That's part of at least I feel like it's part of our skill set as bass players. If we have to move it around a little bit to make it happen, then we have to move it around a little bit to make it happen, and that's to me that's just part of what we ought to be able to do if need be.
Thanks.
So I have a question about like reggae music. Earlier today, Sawande was talking about these rhythms and the counts, and how in Africa their count is different. So do any of you all play reggae or any other genre of music from other countries? And how is that different? Or do you I'm sure you mostly, because you're over here, play in the American style. But what is, if any of you play reggae or something else, what is that? How is that different? How do you get your head to go to a whole nother style of music? Nobody plays reggae?
Haven't you played some?
Not really. I don't consider myself proficient unless I get to play with the cats. So I've played reggae with Detroit Cats. So to me, no. When I was in Paris playing with African musicians, and I played in Senegal with some Senegalese cats, those are the things I feel like I learned something about from the source.
Well, it was interesting because earlier in this session, we talked about your musical journeys, and Jaribu reflected on his time in Cuba and even played an excerpt of an Afro-Cuban rhythm. So if we go back to that, Jaribu, how did you get your head into it? Was it by actually transporting yourself to Cuba? And then what happened when you came back? That certainly stayed with you, right?
No, I had listened to that music a lot long before I went there. It was more the vibe and just seeing how it reacted with the culture and the people. Because
that's it.
If what you're doing is disconnected from the soul of humanity and it's all up in your head, I don't know how rewarding that's. At least for me, I just it's got to be internalized. It's got to come from something. You know, I really love those. People talk about folks not into different stuff, but I love bebop cats who only like bebop. I love blues cats who only like blues. You know, when Teddy said that ain't shit, you know, I understood exactly what he meant. You know.
Well, it's funny because think country western and Ralph. I've seen Ralph stroll with a little lamp on his side playing country western, and you know, to me, because again, I didn't grow up playing bass. I used to like to watch people dance, and the bass made them dance a certain way.
Well, the bass is the foundation of all music. And try playing the wrong tonic or root note with Aretha Franklin, see what happened to you. And I'm going to tell you something. I learned a lot from Aretha. She was very similar to Miles Davis, very similar, because she was always reaching for new things. When she fired me or let me go, you know, I worked with her for 35 years. She fired me 30 times. She would always be trying new things. She always wanted to grow. She was really a jazz musician deep down. She really was. You know, I used to go by her house and we would work on Skylark, Autumn Leaves. You know, she played jazz music. But the thing about the bass, if you don't play the root note for somebody who's a virtuoso soloist, they're going to be lost. I never will forget, this is in a book I'm writing about Aretha right now. She stopped the orchestra one day in Colgate University, and this is something that's very special to me, and started screaming my name out. And I tell you, I thought I needed the pens at that time. Trust me. She was like, "Wow." And I was like, what the hell did I do? You know, Aretha had a temper now. If you were wrong, boy, she called you out. She wasn't no joke. So she had everybody, she said, "God dang it, stop playing." And I was like, oh, what the hell did I do? She said, "Ralph, bring your big behind out here." I said, what's up? "I want to hear that strong bass." And she made me solo in front of the whole audience. And that touched me actually to this day. It's very special to me, you know, because you had to give foundation with the bass. You know, it's like a missile pad. You can't have a missile fly off without a pad. That's the bass. It's an anchor, you know. And that's something that I'll never forget. Never forget her, because you had to play. There's a lot of guys that played with Aretha that you know, they want to lay in the background, you know, and kind of, you know, just sit back there and play the part. Aretha wasn't having, you had to get down, you had to throw down. That's where she was. And that's what's happening with this instrument we have. It's a wonderful instrument. You can do many things with the bass. You can play melodies with the bass. You can play chords with the bass. You can play the foundation. And what's so fascinating about it is you can play legato, long sounds. And I love that. And the staccato sound, you know, detached notes. And one thing about James Jamerson I love so much, he played such a rich tone out of the bass. And it was created with his fingers.
Well, I missed a little bit when my internet went down. Was there any discussion about the bass and the bow? I know Jaribu has a bass there. I don't know if he has a bow handy, but did we launch off into any discussions about the bow and the role of that and the sounds? Because I've seen most of the folks on this panel use a bow, and it's the sound of a voice, right? It brings a whole nother emotion out of a person. I've heard people pull the bow and it sounds like a foghorn. So let's open up some discussion about the bow.
Well,
Jaribu.
the question that was asked before about the difference between the upright and or bass violin and bass guitar, that may be the major difference is you can bow it.
Amen.
And even if you don't get to play the bow on the gig, it's the best way to practice to have intonation and the like. I don't think I want to pick up my bow with Ralph sitting there, but
Oh, hell with you. Yeah, yeah.
Pick it up, Jaribu.
playing Dragonetti when he was a kid, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I had some mean old evil fascist teachers that taught me too. I was the only thing that looked like me out of about 3,000 students.
Look,
Well, Jaribu, if you
one of the reasons I went into different kinds of playing and doing different things with the bass was because I heard people like Ralph, and I was like, well, I probably won't be doing that. So let me do something.
Oh, get out of here.
Can you play a long tone right there, Jaribu, for folks that maybe have never experienced the difference?
I don't know if I got any grease on this, but it's my cheap bow on this cheap bass.
You know, nothing sounds like that. Nothing else sounds like that. It almost
I
sounds
love cheap bows.
like a horn. It sounds like
Long as the weight is
it sounds like a lot of things.
Yeah, I ain't got no rosin on here. Yeah.
It sounds good. I hear it through my iPad. It sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
No, I had a really good bow. It got stolen, and then I've been playing cheap bows ever since.
Long as the weight is good. That's all that matters. If it's the right weight for you. And it's got good hairs. It don't matter.
So what quality do you go for, Marion, when you're using your bow? Are you trying to emulate a voice, a horn? What's kind of in your head about pulling the sound out of that bow and out of that bass? What are you shooting for?
I'm shooting for not playing wolf tones. That's what I'm mainly shooting for. Is not sounding jacked up. Okay, so the bow is not easy, and you really have to get with the bow every day in your practice to be able to really do a good job on it. So primarily for me, I'm just trying to make sure that I keep some good facility. I actually have I do on my the record I recorded called Visions. I actually did a bow did a bow feature on there that was a complete sweat fest. Really sweated over that. So I just think that that you just have to keep with the bow, especially those of us that may play more jazz and improvised kinds of music where we're not bowing all the time, but you have to make it a regular part of your practice so that you can keep your bow chops up. And for me, I'm just trying to make sure that that when I attack the string, that it's a really good solid attack, so you don't have a lot of wolf tones on it. That's
So can you explain to people what a wolf tone is? Because they may not know, Marion.
Well, I'm not even sure what I guess the best explanation is that when you set your bow on the string, there's a set of overtones that you can get that are related to the tone that you want, but are not exactly that tone. And so and you get those if the string is not vibrating right when you get the bow in there. So it has a lot to do with your touch on the string, some good rosin, as Jaribu said, having some good rosin, and making sure that your bow is properly rosined, and that you have worked enough on really getting the proper pressure on the string when you draw it across.
Perfect. So we've got 5 minutes to close. So I want closing comments from everybody. What you want to leave everybody, what closing thoughts you want. So let's go with Ibrahim. We've only got 5 minutes, so give us some parting words of wisdom or thought, or just something from your heart.
Oh, I'm just honored that you guys chose to have me on the panel with such legendary bassists, and I was just sitting back and enjoying everything. And music is life, and I love music, and I'm happy to be a bass player, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I love you guys, and I'm a fan. So I'm just, like most of the time, I was sitting back and listening to everybody. So thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. And,
Thank you, Eve.
I'm glad the pandemic is starting to come to a close so we can all see each other a little bit more.
Thank you. How about you, Chuck? Closing comments?
Ibrahim pretty much said what I was thinking. I've learned a lot. I mean, I've been just kind of sitting back and listening about the history, especially a lot of the upright stuff because I'm new to that. Just that little bit about the bow was fascinating to me because I'm really, really struggling with that right now. My middle name apparently is Wolf Tone because I can't get a sound to save my life, but I'm trying. But I'm tremendously honored just to be even a part of this at all. And I appreciate you guys, your time, and it's inspiring to me. I'm going to do a whole lot more practicing after this for sure.
All righty. Jaribu.
Just stay curious about the music. Some people seem to be incredibly incurious these days. Whatever you think you're doing, check out something else.
Wow. Marion.
Ditto on everybody said. Just thank you so much. It's so great to be here and talk about the bass with my bass brothers. It's really, really great. We didn't even get into some good. I actually like to have a sidebar conversation on how to get what kind of equipment people are using at club dates, some good preamps, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. But anyway, thank you all. It's been really
that would have been cool.
Really,
that would have been cool to talk about
the whole thing. Thank you, and thank you, Kerry. Thank you for your great leadership. Thank you so much.
And the Godfather, Ralphe Armstrong. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Ralph. Unmute yourself, Ralph. We can't hear a word you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sitting here. It's the aroma of these damn flowers. That's such a nice thing to get flowers for your birthday from one of your dear friends. But my main thing is learn as much as possible. Never be closed-minded. And don't rely, like the young guys are always relying on equipment as much as possible. It's good to have good equipment, but rely on getting your own sound. And my thing with young people and all musicians, get into the business aspects of music.
Yeah.
Got to be business because a lot of people out there will treat you like dogs if you don't have that together. Learn as much as you can about business.
Well, my closing comments is thank all of you for playing the bass and being a part of my bass community because you have inspired me, and especially thanks to Sheila Everett Hale for asking me to join, and Phil for encouraging me to be a part of this because I love the music. I do. Everything from pop to hip hop to country western. And I had a teacher named Dan Plisco, and he said this, which is contrary to what the guy said to you, Jaribu. Well, kind of the same thing. He said, I feel sorry for you, Kerry. I said, why? He said, because you like everything. You're never going to be good at anything. I said, well, I love it all. And I would just encourage everybody that's listening, go out on YouTube, look at the names that are on this screen. You've got Ibrahim Jones, Chuck Bartels, Jaribu Shahid, Marion Hayden, Ralphe Armstrong, and support these artists. Look on every platform, whether it's iTunes, whether it's Amazon Music. And if you don't do anything else, just do a Google search and you're going to be amazed at the quality of people that you've just spent the last 2 hours with. You're going to be amazed. So I encourage everybody, as they say in the bars, it's hip to tip. I'm telling you, in the virtual reality, it's hip to Google and go out and buy some of this music and let the education, and that's the time that you spent so intimately with them, let it not be just a passing thought. Support the music. Thank you, Hales, and thank you, City of Arts.
Well, I want to thank all of you. You have been such a blessing. I'm always learning so much. I want to thank you for that background music. Yeah. So tomorrow we have Billy Wilson from Motown.
Yeah.
And we have T.C. Tompkins and Beth Griffiths. She was on The Voice this year. And then Sheila Amuka. And then we have the guitar players coming through.
That's from 1 to 3 with the daytime.
That's
business.
1 to 3. And then in the evening, we are going with the guitar players. And let me see. Sean Blackman will not be with us, and Pazman is going to be the moderator. And then you have Eric, Lace, Brett, George, and Perry Hughes. Oh, my goodness. It's
Perry.
Tomorrow as well. You guys have been wonderful. We'll make sure, Marion, that we get that conversation about the technical part and the instruments and where you get them and what's new next time. We love you. It's been a blast. And all of you who have come to join us, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so, Matt, I want you to know we talked about you right before you came on how you come in, you stay for a few seconds, and then you gone, and you hung out all night. So bass, you guys are, we're honored. Peace out.
Peace out.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Got some music from 9 to
Many blessings. Thank you so much.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Oh, yeah.
It was a beautiful day, right? So with that being said, what a difference a day makes. 24 brought the sun. difference a day makes. And the difference is you. Every day's so much sweeter with your daddy. What a difference a day makes. And the difference is
we give it to number one to drive it home. We give it to number one to drive it home. Yeah, we give it to number one. Come on, let's have some fun. So put your hips close to mine and drive it home. We give it to number two. Drive it home. We give it to number two to drive it home. Yeah, we give it to number two. Baby, just me and you. So keep on rocking. Come on, baby. Drive it home. We give it to number three. Drive it home. We give it to number three to drive it home. Yeah, we give it to number three. Come on, baby, you and me. So keep it rocking. Come on now. And drive it home. Come on, drive it.
Detroit tonight.
take your coat off, son. Set class of automatic big block. Junkyard Jesus, give me a beatbox. Janet Dean, I'm living in my nightmare. Half a pack of cools and a quarter beer. Got a Mopar priest, living out of oil. 70,000 miles of barbed wire coil. This is the place, the sun don't shine. I got tires full of water and broken hearts. Track tape by Frank Sinatra. Junkyard Jesus kicking the opera. Owner's manual graveyard breaks. Well, all I need to know is the year and make. I got a big Dominator with the front end shimmy. Tackle box and a bait shop boogie. This is the place, the sun don't shine. I got tires full of water and broken hearts. Yeah. Tires is real. Well, I wanna show you just what it means to be my baby. Put on your high heels, put on your pearls, put on your red dress, let down your curls. But I wanna show you just what it means to be my baby. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I've been loving you for far too long. And I wanna show you just what it means to be my baby.
gave up on me. Learn how to guide my heart, love and still think smart, 'cause hurt you can't foresee. Now I know that I'll go, all and be okay. All these memories, part of my history. I can't be stuck in yesterday. I wanna be free. I wanna be free. Oh, let it go and be free. I've been through some things, now it's gonna change. No more crying as of today. I'm letting it go, don't wanna hold on no more. I'm free. I'm captured no more. I want my dreams that were stolen and washed away, but never showed up on this show. I'm breaking the bondage that was built here. I'm moving on. Create a new life and show the world a new me, a stronger me. Heard your time expired a long time ago. It's time for me to walk away. Oh, I am free. No more suffering, no more bad memories. From this point on, it's part of my history. I am free. I gotta be free. Wanna be free. Yeah, yeah. Left my confidence on, and I started my life back in Detroit, looking for something new. Yeah, yeah. I've lived so many different ways, so many different times. I'm here to tell you people, not so pretty in this state of mind. You can see where I'm coming from. I just got to get on with the new. Yes, I do. I left one life and started anew, and I'm trying to find my way, still after the same things. And I keep on searching. Am I getting closer? Am I getting closer? I want to win. Am I getting closer? I want to win. Always looking from the outside, never in. I want to be closer to the one. I've been trying to reach myself. It's been so